So, you know those nights you stay up till 3 a.m. and you end up in those weird parts of YouTube and you just wind up watching videos that make no sense? You fell down rabbit holes you didn't even know you were interested in. So sometimes those crazy things happen to me, and most recently I got into one about looking into extraterrestrials and the whole universe, are we alone, what is out there spectrum. And I've been watching a lot of documentaries and interviews with people like Dr. Stephen Greer or Dr. Judy Wood or Boyd Bushman from Lockheed Skunk Works. These people have mass intelligence, a lot of inside information that they're capable of telling to us for different various reasons, and they kind of took it on as their own plight to get this message out to everybody they could. Throughout all of their different journeys, they're running into roadblocks that have always been set by our own government, which when you see it coming from this many directions, you know our government is covering up a lot of shady shit. Today I wanted to focus on Boyd Bushman, who worked for Lockheed, and then also Dr. Stephen Greer, who speaks out a lot about extraterrestrial life and space exploration and projects our government's covered up, all that kind of stuff. Both of them have a lot of insight, and I was just listening to their stories, and kind of what they were talking about blew my mind. So I just wanted to pass that information on to you. By all means, digest it however you do. If you just want to have a snack while you listen to me and then forget it all right when it's done, cool. But this takes time to digest, let me forewarn you. Some of the stuff that I heard from them, and I'm not saying believe everything, however, I like to dig and I like to look for credible sources. I think you'd know that about me by now. And honestly, as much as you want to try to dispute what they're saying because you believe in other things, you kind of start to realize that they're showing you more proof than you have on your end to prove what you believe in. So it kind of does just shock you right into their reality. But let me give you some of the information and you can decide for yourself what you think of it. So I want to start with talking about the former Lockheed Martin Skunk Works senior scientist, Boyd Bushman. He is the guy that is giving us a lot of information about the technology the UFO craft is made from, what was encountered in Area 51 that got the government involved. And he has all this background knowledge, and it's insane because he has tons of visual and audio evidentiary support to back all of his claims. So in this interview, he's talking about these alien races that were coming down to Earth, that not only have these aliens visited us, but they've been doing it for decades, and they do it continuously, and they work with us. And Boyd was also saying that right now our government has them working with China and Russia to try to reproduce alien-like vehicle that works with anti-gravity. And he mentioned that 36 or 38 American scientists working on that project right now have already died. That's probably documented somewhere. I mean, this stuff is fascinating. So anyway, he's doing this interview, right? And he's talking about a pilot he knew working for Lockheed who came into contact with a spacecraft, and he was on the airways asking if it was friendly. They confirmed that it was not. The craft started flying away. He responded saying, "I think I should take a shot. It's flying away from me. You're saying that it's not friendly." The person on the other end said, "Shoot it." He did. It went down. And after that, Boyd said the pilot of that aircraft witnessed a spacecraft, and when he walked into it, the walls were translucent, the floor was sponge-like. He had executed 3 of the extraterrestrials that were inside of the ship. They were dead upon impact, and then he looked out the window and saw one other one walking away. And Boyd says he claims that he got back in his craft and left. He didn't want to be related to the scene. He knew the government was going to come and find it. And that is how the Area 51 alien story supposedly started. But Boyd goes into further explanation of what the government then did and could be potentially working on, and using extraterrestrial technologies and working backwards to try to put it back together. He was also saying that there have been many trades made between alien races and our government for technology and parts or fuel. So this is blowing my mind already, but the facts that Boyd gave were what was really astounding. So Boyd went further into discussing the 5 major forms of force and how we know them to be. So first we have the strong force, which is atomic binding. Secondly, you have electromagnetism, which is light. Thirdly, you have the weak force. Fourth, you have gravity, which obviously. And fifth and finally, you have magnetism. So those are the 5 forms of force that we know right now. Boyd is confirming that the government knows of at least 8 forms of force. So that means there's a 6, a 7, and an 8. He said that with finding these forms of force, it would unlock a lot of things that the human race could do, potentially changing everything we know to be true. And he said first, it would provide free, clean energy to every single human being on the earth without ever needing to use a fossil fuel. So this is all a little reminiscent of what Nikola Tesla was discovering with his forms of force and how he was going to provide free energy to every single person in the world. However, he mysteriously died at the New Yorker Hotel in 1943, and ironically, later that year, US had patented technologies where they were working on the death ray, which is something Tesla had been working on, saying it was the only form of defense against a spacecraft because it would shoot a big beam of energy right at a spacecraft, shutting down all of its electronics. And they're saying that's potentially what that pilot could have shot at Area 51, who Boyd was referring to. Because that alien aircraft was shot down in 1947, that would have given the government 4 years to work on the technology to figure out what Tesla had discovered. All of this stuff, I feel, is related. It's interesting how it comes from all different corners of the earth. You get information from the science community, a mathematics community, you get soldiers and generals' points of views, teachers, economists, presidents, world leaders. You're getting all of these different perspectives trying to tell you the truth is being hidden by the fallacies we're being bombarded with every day. And it's so apparent because why in the world would they want us to know all of this stuff that could potentially help us as the human race not be dependent on a government? Because then they lose. Their power structure falls apart, and they don't want unity for the human race because then control is useless. Because if a human race all worked together, then to control us would be pointless because we wouldn't do it. There was a study being done that was talking about why inherently do human beings always try to find someone to hate. You have that innate anger and you want to project it onto somebody else, trying to say that what they're doing in their life is wrong or bad because you are judging it from your perspective, when really you're judging yourself and you're taking out the anger you have internally and projecting it onto somebody else. This is really fascinating stuff. Boyd was also talking about anti-gravity, which has been in heated discussion a lot lately, and it relates to everything from warfare to our universe. Because like we all know, stuff that's been talked about with our universe, the 5%, the matter that we see, the particles floating out there, the stars, the moons, the planets, all of that, that's 5% of the universe. As of more recently, we discovered there's something called dark matter. That takes up about 25% of the universe. So we're starting to learn what dark matter is. Now, Boyd Bushman went and blew my goddamn mind when he said that the 70% of the universe that we really have no idea what the fuck it is, so we call it dark energy, that could potentially be the remnants of what the other forms of force are, anti-gravity being included in that. That is fascinating, because that's all stuff we've never touched. And then it made my mind think, what if the reason we can't comprehend what it is, the reason it's invisible to us because it's all the dark parts of the universe, What if it's just because it's a part of a video game we haven't explored? It's those extremely hard, advanced Mario levels of life that we haven't reached yet. We can't comprehend how to get there. We need to figure out what our universe is made of, because without knowing this, we can't know that. Boyd also mentioned ex-Lockheed president Bill Rich, who had openly spoken on knowing that we could deliver ET back to his home planet, and made references to the fact that our own government has taken so much extraterrestrial technology and hidden it in black ops projects that are buried so deep that it would take a force of God to try to get them released to the public where they could actually do some good and provide us with free energy. The concern they're saying that is coming from our government has to do with the fact that if everyday people had means to gain anti-gravity and other potential dangerous weaponry, that it could cause catastrophic events. However, there are ways to give out this free energy without allowing the technology for anti-gravity and other weaponry to be involved. Boyd also talked about there being 13 members of a specific alien race based on Earth regularly. That means there's 13 extraterrestrials just on Earth all the time. And as shocking and stupid as that may sound, we're probably stupid to think there aren't more. I mean, in these documentaries where they talk about what Earth really is and how it's so rich and abundant in food and animal life and fuels, and how our very own moon is kind of unexplainable in how it's circling Earth the way that it does and creates waves and affects our weather, and it could potentially be anything from a weapon to a spacecraft, and it is loaded with energy supply. These energies, these renewable, clean energies that we could be using here on Earth exist right on our moon. It could be a fueling station. All of these are possibilities that when you bring them up, you sound nutty because we're not talking about them all the time. But we should be, because this is our future. I mean, honestly, Dr. Stephen Greer talks about if we don't open our consciousness up, the stuff we're talking about right now, these clean energies and this energy that can kind of come out of nowhere and could be caused via consciousness, could have been used in 9/11. Dr. Judy Wood talks about how anti-gravity and something that forces molecules apart rather than binds them together was definitely used on the site during the attacks. What does that mean? And what does it mean when she also discovers that a hurricane that causes an abundant amount of static electricity, when combined with another form of force, could have potentially brought down the buildings, and there was a hurricane on the coast of Manhattan on the morning of 9/11. Is that somehow implying that a government can use energy created by the Earth as a weapon? Or does it mean that they can control weather? What does this mean? Is this a reality? Would that somehow suggest that the Hurricane Katrina that hit New Orleans could have been controlled? Could that have been a weapon? I mean, you hear these stories that come out of the military, like Chris Kyle, the sniper who famously came back and wrote a book and tried to defame Jesse Ventura, and then later he was killed. But does it have something to do with his story corroborating with the fact that there were snipers sent by the US government down to the Katrina site to snipe out black people? I mean, if you have a government that could potentially control the weather and use it as weaponry against its own people, and then have militarized police who are willing to work against its own people that they swore to serve and protect, and then you also have FEMA camps run by government officials that kind of seem like zoos for people, because a lot of stories were claiming that people were not allowed to leave FEMA camps even when they had somewhere to go. All of this to be said, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is a channel where information is being shared freely. You take it however you want. Do with it what you will. There are so many more notes I have from Boyd Bushman. There are so many more notes I have from Dr. Steve Greer. There are so many more notes I have from Dr. Judy Wood. And I urge you all to educate yourself on what these people have to say. Because let me tell you, the more sources you start to receive factual and evidentiary supported information, the more you start to realize you may not know what reality is. And that is the coolest part of this video. So I want to leave it there. Investigate for yourselves, ask questions, and always be curious. Continue the conversation in comments below, and please ask any questions you would like to have answered. I love reading those. Take care of yourself. Have a great weekend. I will see you next week. Peace.